Well, we know the Pac-12 wants to rebuild, but does that conference have great media rights value?
You are Locked On College Football, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On College Football. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view every day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and your daily source to stay up to date with the biggest stories in the greatest sport on planet Earth. Realignment, coaching carousel, the portal, and more. We've always got you covered. This episode brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Great guest with me today, Bob Thompson, former president of Fox Sports. Who better to ask about media rights stuff than you, Bob? I appreciate you coming back on the show, and let's just dive right into it. Whatever a rebuilt Pac-12 would look like, some teams from the Mountain West, maybe some teams from the American or Sun Belt or all Mountain West. If it's a mix of schools like that, what sort of media rights valuation on a per-team basis do you think that would get from television networks?
Well, thanks for having me, Spencer. I think that, if you look at probably 25, 26 is when they'll be negotiating this deal or probably be out in the market. And they have a good idea at that point who's probably going to be in the conference. Is it just all Mountain West? Is it, as you said, a mix with AAC and the P2s, P2 being WSU and OSU, as well as Mountain West Conference? I think you're probably looking in the range of $7.5, $10 million per school, which is not far off from what the AAC is probably getting about that point with ESPN as well. I think a lot of it's going to be determined by kind of who's in the marketplace and who's doing the bidding. Is it, and how badly they need the content? Is it streamers? Is it some linear networks who are trying to prop up, their offerings? You've seen what True TV was out in the marketplace the other day buying some kind of second tier Mountain West Conference games for a couple of years. So, they could be a bidder. Certainly the Fox and CBS Sports Network who are the current Mountain West Conference rights holders, and assuming a good number of those schools are going to somehow be involved if OSU and WSU reconstitute, the conference. So I think, a lot of it's just going to depend on as I said, the marketplace. The other thing is, for now, I think OSU and WSU have been very smart. They've played it well. They did, I think, a great job securing the CW and a couple of Fox games for this coming season. Not sure the money's great, but the money doesn't matter for them right now. What matters is exposure, staying relevant, and kind of biding some time to see what might shake out, with some other potential rounds of realignment.
So when you're looking at the Pac-12 right now and the different moves that Oregon State and Washington State have. And by the way, a quick Google search says that the American Athletic Conference media deal pays about $7 million per school. When you're looking at what the Pac-12 could do you think it is enticing enough to go, like, let's say they were able to get 8.5 per school. Do you think that an American Conference team like a Tulane or Memphis, Rice, UTSA, whatever combination of schools it could be, or Mountain West schools for that matter, do you think that it is valuable enough to where those universities would say, this is the direction we want to go, we feel like this is going to be, the best group of 5 conference in the country?
Right. I think you're right on the AAC. Their average was about $7 million, but in the back half of the deal, they're probably a bit higher than that. So let's just say 8.5, I think is probably pretty fair. I think it still would be somewhat enticing to a AAC school. Some of them, not necessarily all of them. There might be a geographic issue with some of them, but for some of the schools, it might be an interesting move. I think for the Mountain West Conference, it's definitely a move that certainly they would take a look at, because right now they're at about 4.1 million, I think it is. And then Boise State's got the kicker that gets them up to just under 6, I think it is. And that deal's up in a couple of years. So the timing could be pretty good for the Mountain West Conference schools. and it's going to be a bump for them if somehow the two folks in the Pac-12 can get together a group that is worth $7.5–8 million. That's probably going to be more than what the Mountain West Conference is likely to renew for. So I think it's an interesting option for all the schools in the G5 area, because the Pac-12 is still going to have some cachet about it just because of the name. And you are merging in with a couple of, what have been P5 schools for years and years and years. So I think there would be some interest on both parts. The question becomes, what's the structure? There's a lot of penalties or a lot of potential payments to the Mountain West Conference if they suck. If the Pac-12 schools suck teams out. If the conference kind of falls apart or just reconstitutes in a smaller method and does smaller size and does some sort of a merger with the Pac-12 schools is another way. But no matter what, there's going to be some costs, and I'm not sure if I'm OSU and WSU that I want everybody in the Mountain West. I probably want maybe 7 or 8 of them.
Yeah, and that's something I've talked about before, because the idea of a reverse merger has been brought up, because that would be the least expensive for Oregon State, Washington State, because there's no penalty to get teams from the Mountain West if you bring everybody over. But then you're getting to the conversation about diluting media rights payouts, and the strength and perception of the league I don't think is as good as it can be, because that also doesn't leave a door open for if ACC schools somehow become available, or if American schools do want to join up into this league. I think the sweet spot would probably be around 5 to 6 Mountain West teams, and then see who else would be interested there. But you talk about all these media rights valuations, and you used to run the Fox Sports and everything, and understand how this works. Help everybody understand how does media rights valuation get calculated? Like Fox and CBS have a deal with the Mountain West. How do they come to decide, we are going to pay X amount so that you can give your schools X amount of dollars per year? What's that process like?
Well, we run through a variety of numbers, certainly projected ratings, what the markets are of the schools that would be involved in the conference, what kind of retransmission consent or affiliate fees, just say if it's on a FS1 type thing, from the cable operators, satellite guys, what kind of fees we could generate from them. Put all those things together, run the production costs and come up with a rights fee number that, it's going to entail a lot of things. And then also we'll take a look at the comps, which would be similarly sized conferences. And in this case, that's really going to be the AAC most likely, and whatever maybe the Mountain West Conference does if they do some sort of a renewal. The only way I think that they might be able to get around the reverse merger and it being so expensive is, depending on what the bylaws say, and they might be able to, you might say 7 or 8 or 9, maybe 2/3 majority dissolves the conference, and those guys walk in with the Pac-12.
I hadn't thought about that.
Could be one way. I'm not, I've seen some talk about that. I have not got into the Pac or the Mountain West Conference bylaws to know if that is.
Well, that was a thought with the Magnificent Seven in the ACC. I think it was around a year ago. Like if they had gotten an 8th team, I think Duke was the holdout reportedly, that they didn't want to just dissolve the ACC and then form a new ACC where they could give themselves unequal revenue sharing. I hadn't thought about that possibility because, Oregon State's athletic director, Scott Barnes, said that he feels like 8 teams is the right number for them to expand to because it keeps them nimble in the space. How would a television network look at a conference that, even if not forever, even if it's a short-term play just to keep, a literal conference alive per the NCAA rules, how would a television network approach, let's say, an 8-team conference that's Oregon State, Washington State, and just 6 Mountain West teams?
Well, there's a finite amount of dollars, and it may be the same if it's 8 schools or the same if it's 10 schools. And you're just going to have 2 more mouths at the table you've got to feed. So I don't know that it would necessarily, dramatically change my calculation on what the total value of the conference package would be. I think it really comes down to a question of, how bad do I need the product? Is it, need to have, nice to have, or don't really care about? So that's that combined with the, the typical mathematics that you run on any type of a deal like that would all come into play.
Yeah, the timeline could work out because the Mountain West media rights deal expires the season after, but the one before Oregon State and Washington State have to get back up to 8 teams. So something's going to happen. So,
yeah, timing's good. Timing works out, and I think that's and I think that the NCAA has kind of laid down the law for OSU and WSU that they've got to be back to X number of 8 schools by within 2 years. So
by the 2026 season, they have to have 8 teams or they're done, and then they would forfeit the war chest that they got from the 10 departing schools, and that's a couple $100 million for them to split. Yeah, no, I don't think they're trying to just say that's not that much money and what. No, they're going to keep it. Bob Thompson, retired president of Fox Sports. Appreciate the time very much.
My pleasure.
Shakeups in the Big 12 on the recruiting trail. That's coming up next. Coming up right now, Game Time, which is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch, which is really good for you, the consumer. They've got killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying Major League Baseball tickets. You can save up to 60%. That's over half, last time I checked, off buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, whatever you're looking for. They've got it. And you get a panoramic view of your seat before you arrive, so you know exactly what to expect. Take the guesswork out of buying Major League Baseball tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Kansas State gets 5-star tight end Linkon Cure to commit. What does that mean as the Big 12 recruiting landscape evolves in a big way? That's Brian Smith, Locked On Recruiting Insider here at the network, brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. Is it just a matter of this was an in-state recruit that Kansas State was able to get? Because even though that factor is in play, you had schools like Oregon going after this kid. And I think it says a lot that Kansas State was able to land Linkon Cure.
Did anybody pick that early on, other than maybe some people in Manhattan, the Little Apple? Probably not. I personally think it's cool because we need schools like this to keep the intrigue going. I know that obviously everybody's got their favorite school, but look, Kansas State getting a 4 or 5-star guy that the likes of Oregon wanted is not going to happen every day. And they have to stay relevant to make these recruitments not only fun, but make the games on Saturdays fun. If kids like this go there with that crazy offense they have, nobody ever seems to do well with, you're going to add a player that can stretch the field and do things most tight ends can't. I'm not saying he's like number 19 was for Georgia last year. Let's not get crazy, but Brock Bowers or not, curious. I've seen him play. He is really athletic, man. That is a kid that can move. He runs more like a receiver. He's going to play early. It wouldn't shock me if he was like the number 2 tight end by the end of his first spring at Kansas State. He's really good.
6'6", 220 pounds. Might have Avery Johnson throwing him the football by the time he arrives next year. As of now, he's the highest rated commit in the history of Kansas State football. Do you feel like they can parlay this, assuming they're able to keep him committed, because certainly other schools will continue to lobby and call him and try to flip him and whatnot. But this late in the process, I don't get the sense that is supremely likely. You just can't rule it out. But if he signs with Kansas State, do you think that is kind of a linchpin recruit for Chris Kleiman and company to say, hey, this is what Kansas State recruiting is capable of? Because they are not a recruiting power, nor is really anybody in the Big 12 right now.
Yeah, the Big 12 is by far the lowest of the 4 conferences when it comes to recruiting.
High school kids, just high school kids.
Yeah, the JUCO thing is a total different animal there because all the Texas and Oklahoma JUCOs and whatnot. But I think it's really interesting because maybe they can get a few more, but it's still an in-state kid. Like if they got him out of Texas, I'd have more confidence in what you're asking, but they got a local kid. When was the last time Kansas State took a kid from UT or A&M? Have they? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not betting on this other than just saying it's a one-off, but it's a great one. If you're going to get one, get the local kid that can be an NFL player. That's always a good way to go because I think barring injury, he will get paid. So I'm going to go with, I don't think it's going to strike into something, although I hope I'm wrong. Again, I think it's cool when a team like Kansas State rises up And that's what makes college football so much fun.
Yeah, 6'6", 220 pounds. I think that has all the makings of an impact true freshman. I also wonder if Kansas State is the only school in the country to have their highest ranked all-time commit be a tight end. Like guys like this just don't come around very often, which is another reason I think it's impressive that Kansas State was able to pull this off, even though it's an in-state kid. You don't see a lot of tight ends that are this highly sought after. You just don't. Most tight ends, they're just good, solid, contributing, oftentimes early in their careers, football players. But this is a big impact sort of guy that can do a lot of things for your offense. And Kansas State, I think, is a testament to what Chris Kleiman has built in Manhattan, what they can be this year, and what they can continue to be in the future.
If they get one guy like this a year, it would change their program dramatically. You know, I'll speak for them. They'll take it. You're right, though. I think the impact is his ability with his height and size. Like, he plays more like a receiver. This is a kid that's going to play early. Maybe he helps the guys down the road they can recruit. They can say, look, this is what our 5-star did. We proved it. They need him to hit. Like, they really need him to hit. That would help change Kansas State football in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Speaking of Big 12 recruiting shakeups, Kyle Whittingham is going to retire very soon. This could be his last year or next season. He hasn't said publicly, but when you name your head coach in waiting, who is your defensive coordinator, I don't think you are going to be at that place for more than 2 years. I think 2025 is the latest we will see Kyle Whittingham decide to end his career, and this feels like it could very well be the last season. As Utah has moved into the Big 12, they're the favorites this year. They would be year in and year out as long as Kyle Whittingham's there. I think this introduces an element of an unknown, but let's look at it from a recruiting standpoint. What was your reaction on the trail with all the other Big 12 teams in mind when you saw this news and, you know, is essentially Kyle Whittingham's retirement is very, very close?
I was like, it kind of sucks in a way because I remember when he was the coordinator for Urban. He's been at the same school forever. And I remember Urban told me a long time ago, he's like, this guy's really good. Now, I don't think even Urban knew he was going to be this good. Because
this guy's good.
Because like if he could have, and he just wanted to be in the state of Utah, he's a BYU grad, coach at Utah, blah, blah, blah. But if he'd have been in an SEC school with his coaching knowledge, his in-game and all that, he might have got a ring somewhere. Could you imagine him at LSU or something? Like,
oh, yeah.
I mean, their defense would be better than it is right now. That's another story. But this is a great guy to have in college football, just what we're talking about Kansas State. Utah constantly competes with programs to get better recruits, constantly beats them. He constantly goes into like a game like, oh, they're beat up. We don't know. They find ways to navigate it. Not only him, but the guys he hires, everything they do, their culture. That's why it's great. And I hope it's 3 years just because he's a great coach. I think it's good for football. But here's a little caveat. He's not going anywhere. He can leave pretty much on his own accord. I'm assuming the defense coordinator is really good. And I'm also going to assume that guy just kind of like him wants to be there. I think there's a chance it's more than 2 just because of that. There's not going to be any rush, and they're probably paying him well. But maybe it's just me hoping that they keep a great coach in that one program.
Yeah, Morgan Scalley, the defensive coordinator, sharp defensive mind, places like USC, not the UFC, that would be bizarre. USC have tried to poach him away, and he stayed put. I think I was talking with JT Wistersill of Locked On Utes yesterday about this, and he said, you know, there's such a strong, identifiable, and repeatable culture at Utah that Whittingham has established, and Scalley, he feels, is the best guy to kind of continue that tradition. Still, though, I'll get you out of here on this, Brian. I wonder whether there will be a recruiting drop-off. And again, Utah is not some big mega player in the portal or the high school ranks, but they're not bad. Like, they can pull a top 30, top 40 class. Do you think that when Whittingham leaves, they suffer some level of a recruiting dip?
That's a really great question because it's not like they're going to get the number 1 player out of LA or Houston or Miami every year. But they've done the best job of evaluating, especially with bigs. 3-star hits on bigs is random. Utah does it every year. They might be the best program in the country with that. So that specifically, like they take some D tackle from Fresno or something, everybody else is like, and he ends up being second team all Pac-12. You know that well, obviously, with where you went.
I do.
So that is my concern because he's just an extra set of eyes to help the evaluation process. Iowa and Utah probably do the best job of finding guys for their defense that fit, regardless of the recruiting ranking, of any two schools in the country. And both their coaches are about to be done in their careers. It's ironic. So I hope that they can continue to do that. Scowey's a really good coach, or he wouldn't be getting promoted to the head coaching position. But again, that's one less set of eyes that you can trust.
Yeah, Jonah Ellis was a guy that had a standout Utah career. I think he was second in the Pac-12 in sacks this past season. One of the best pass rushers in the last couple seasons. He was the number 91 outside linebacker in the country, according to 24/7 Sports. And that's just what Utah does. They take guys like that and they turn them into NFL caliber players. Brian Smith, our Locked On recruiting insider here at the network, brought to you by our friends at LinkedIn Jobs. Brian, appreciate the time.
Thank you, sir.
The Big 12 preseason media poll is out, and I got a couple things to say on the matter. Stick around. Did you guys see the Big 12 preseason media poll? I did. I kind of laughed. Like just a little bit. I chuckled at a couple of things. So I have one matter to discuss and then one hot take to present to you that is going to be hotter to some than to others. So Colorado, according to EA Sports and their upcoming college football video game, which I am beyond excited to play. I read the most recent blog post. It's fantastic. Go check it out. It's well worth your time. That game has Colorado, I believe, is like a top 20 team. The Big 12 media voted them 11th. Okay. I have been incredibly consistent with my standard on Colorado. I'm trying to have an objectively honest conversation about where they are at, what expectations are, how to react to what happens here, and everything of the sorts. I try not to be all the way over here or all the way over there, which is where it feels like most people are. Someone's got to be in the middle to say what's actually happening. I'm trying to fill that void as best I can. I hope I'm succeeding. I like to think that I am. Colorado being 11th here is patently crazy because you would not look at a team if you took out the Colorado logo, the Dion factor, Shador, and everything they do to turn people against them and such, or that turn people off about them. They have gotten better this offseason. They're going to be a better team because if you took a 4-8 team that had close games against good football teams. They played Utah to a one-possession game. They played Oregon State to a one-possession game. They played Arizona to a game-winning field goal. These are not complete mismatches here. Was Colorado the worst team? Yeah. Were they punching above their weight by playing those games that close a year ago? I'll argue that. I think that's true. I think Oregon State was much better than Colorado. It was still kind of a close game. Kind of. Sort of. And, there were a bunch of turnovers in that game. But still, Colorado at 11th is ridiculous. Because if you're a 4-8 team, you have some close losses, you have an NFL quarterback, and you have addressed your weaknesses, it doesn't mean their offensive and defensive lines are going to be the best in the Big 12. I'm not sure they will be, particularly for the offensive line. I have more hope for their defensive line improving. But their offensive line has to take a step forward. It was one of the worst I've ever seen in college football last year. So if you just are a little bit better, that's got to be worth at least 2 wins. That's the way I look at it. I think Colorado's a bowl team this year. Are they winning more than 8 games? No. Are they winning 8 games? I don't think so. Are they winning 6? They're winning at least 5. Are they winning 6 or 7? That's where I'd peg them right now. So to have them down at 11th, behind TCU, Texas Tech, UCF, Iowa State, Arizona, Kansas, Oklahoma State, Kansas State, and Utah, all of them, I don't quite see that. I think 11th is too low for a preseason poll. Your expectations for Colorado coming into the year should not be that they're a Big 12 title contender. They're not. Even with Shador Sanders and everything they've got, it's not that Colorado hasn't improved. It's that other teams around them are just better. I believe that, and I think Colorado has improved. They're not the 11th best team in the conference. I will be surprised because that means Colorado's finishing with a losing record. And as I've said, that's not where I expect them to be. Now, the Big 12 is showcasing its depth here. So there is an element of, oh my gosh, 11th is ridiculous. Yes, It's not as ridiculous as being 11th in the ACC, though, because this is a conference where you have legitimately 6 teams, I believe, maybe even 7, that could win the Big 12 championship, that have a realistic shot where not so many crazy things have to happen for them to walk away Big 12 champions in the regular or in the conference championship game. And the second one is, of course, all that we really care about now. So Utah being first, that doesn't surprise me. Kansas State being second, that's how my votes would go. They didn't give me a vote. But if I had one, those would be my top 2. Oklahoma State at 3, I can't get behind that. I'd have Kansas 3 because of the quarterback difference. Nothing else. Mike Gundy's a great coach. They have a high floor program, one of the highest floor programs in all of college football. And they've got Alan Bowman at quarterback. Sorry, I can't get on board with you being the number 3 team in this Big 12. I just can't. Not when the 2 teams behind you have got Jalen Daniels and Rocco Becht. Now, Becht is a younger guy, immensely talented. Jalen Daniels, if he's healthy, that might be all Kansas needs to make it to the Big 12 title game this year. So I wouldn't have Oklahoma State any higher than 5 and the number 5 team. So that's my Colorado take. Is like 11 is not as crazy as it sounds in this conference. It's still too low. Like they should not be below TCU. I don't think they should be below UCF. I don't even know if they should be. They should probably be below West Virginia. Like those are the teams that you'd say they're returning too much, and they were far too much better. That sounds weird. I don't know if that English is right. Than Colorado a season ago, but UCF, TCU, yeah, that's a little bit much for me. Here's the other take I have about the Big 12 preseason media poll. That's probably going to drive some people a little crazy. I think Arizona at 5 and having received 3 first-place votes is pretty nuts. I am down on Arizona this year. I was as high as anybody that I'm aware of that talked about Arizona a season ago. Their win total was 4.5, and I said on the show I had at the time, RIP Pac-12, that they were the easiest over bet in the entire conference, and they were. Their win total is 4.5. They doubled that and went to 9. This year, their win total is 7.5. It used to be 8.5, but somebody, either Sharps, the sportsbook, or the public, recognized what I see in Arizona, which is that's a capable team. They're a bowl team more likely than not. They're not a Big 12 title contender. And for them to be above Iowa State and West Virginia, I don't see it. Here's a hot take on, I don't even know if this is that hot given the win totals, but it just kind of has the appearance of being that way. So we'll just kind of run with it here. UCF is going to win at least as many games as Arizona. That's it. If you don't think that's a hot take, great. Welcome to the UCF fan club. But I like UCF's offseason a lot more than Arizona's. Coaching continuity, upgrade at quarterback, brought in high-end talent. Arizona, new head coach, who we don't know whether or not he can make it against the big boys in the Big 12. It's a higher level of coaching than what you've got in the Mountain West. I hope that is plain and obvious. You've lost a half a dozen or more starters from last year's team, including a variety of NFL caliber guys, whether to the transfer portal or to the NFL. And yes, you have an NFL offensive lineman, an NFL corner, an NFL receiver, and maybe an NFL, at the very least, a high-end caliber college quarterback. Is that enough to be a Big 12 title contender? Not this year. Not this year, it is not. UCF, I think, is trending up. Arizona, at least for 1 year, I think pulls back from what they were a season ago, which was 9-3 in a loaded Pac-12. This is a loaded Big 12, and I think Arizona is middle upper tier team, closer to the middle than people realize. They have the same win total, according to our friends at FanDuel, do Arizona and UCF. So this is my bold, hot, whatever you want to call it take. Arizona and UCF, or UCF will win at least the same number of games as Arizona. At the very least, if Arizona is 6-6, UCF is at least 6-6. If Arizona is 7-5, UCF will be at least 7-5. Just a gut feeling that I've got. But those are my 2 biggest takeaways. Not my only takeaways. Iowa State is such an enigma in this conference. Like, what do we, you know what I mean? So, Yeah, why don't we end on that? No, that's as crisp and clear as it gets. So Colorado, Arizona, biggest takeaways from the Big 12 preseason media poll. If you got thoughts, by all means, let me know. Let's talk about it. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. And until then, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.